So you just got a 2024 Mustang GT and you spent all your hard-earned savings on that car. Now you gotta save a little bit of money for the gas. So we're gonna be answering, should you be running 93 octane, or you can save money and actually run 87 octane on your Mustang GT. Hey guys, welcome to Red 50. Right behind me is a 2024 Mustang GT with the Gen 4 Coyote motor. Here's a view of the Gen 4 Coyote motor with the dual intake, 480 horsepower if you don't have the active exhaust, 486 if you have the active exhaust, and if you have a dark horse, you actually get 500 horsepower. But today, we're gonna be talking about, should you be using 93 octane or the 87 octane on your S650 Mustang? Does it have any benefit, or are you just wasting money? So the 87 versus 93 octane debate continues with the S650 Mustang generation. I feel like every time the new Mustang comes out, people are always wondering if they can get by with the 87 octane, or do they really need to spend money for the 93 octane? The S650 Mustang generation is no different. People are asking the same question, and today I'm going to be answering that question not only from my personal experiences, but also objectively based on actual results that we have seen from the S550 Mustang and the S650 Mustang as well. So we're going to be tackling that and really answer the question if it's worth saving a little bit extra money and running 87 octane versus a 93 octane. And those of you who've been putting premium on your car, it's probably not a big deal for you. But someone who's probably just jumped from a car that took regular fuel, it is a pretty big significant price increase from 87 to 93. It could be often as much as $1 per gallon, which really adds up because I think the Mustang GT has a tank of about 16 gallons. So the three things we're really going to be focusing on is going to be the power. Is there any difference between an 87 octane versus 93 octane? And also the fuel economy. Is there any difference between the 87 versus 93 octane? And of course the reliability concerns when you have a Gen 4 Coyote with such high compression. Is that going to result in some future problems running 87 octane versus the 93 octane? So we're going to go ahead and dive into each of those reasonings and just kind of objectively tackle them, and also my personal experiences with these, especially on my 2019 Mustang GT. But yeah, we're going to go ahead into that. I do want to get it out of the way first. Obviously, 87 is much cheaper, which is primarily the reason people are wanting to run 87 octane in their Mustang, especially if there is no real benefit for running 93 octane. Why put all of that hard-earned money putting 93 octane on your Mustang when you can just save up that money and actually use it towards the mods? Now, it also does not help that Ford on the owner's manual actually says you can use 87 octane, which also makes people think that 87 octane is more than enough for what you're doing and you don't really need 93 octane. So that's where a lot of confusion also comes from. But let's start talking about the three main reasons between the 87 versus 93 octane. What are the benefits? Is there any benefit? So the first thing, the main thing is going to be the power. You get a Mustang for its power. The Gen 4 Coyote motor making 486 horsepower is absolutely crazy from a naturally aspirated motor. So all of that is good, but does it have any impact? Are the ratings impacted by if you run the 87 octane versus the 93 octane? So if you look at the owner's manual, it actually does say the minimum is 87 octane, but right underneath it does say to get the proper performance out of your car, you should be running a 91 octane or higher. So that is talking about the premium fuel, which would come to be usually 93 in most states. So clearly Ford is suggesting to run the 93 octane for the maximum power output possible out of the Gen 4 Coyote motor. Now, there hasn't been any test done with the 2024 Mustang GTs yet because they're still kind of new there, but there were a lot of tests done with the S550 Mustang GTs, and the Gen 3 Coyote motor had about 2% difference in terms of the horsepower rating, versus the dyno. So 87 will result in about 2 to 3% less horsepower than the 93 octane. Now, personally, I have a 2019 Mustang GT which makes 460 horsepower, so really a 2% decrease, or even a 3% decrease would be about 15 horsepower, and you would kind of be around 445 horsepower, which, to be honest, I did run 87 octane on my personal Mustang GT, the 2019, and I did not notice any significant difference in terms of power from the 93 octane versus the 87, because really, when you're talking about 10 to 15 horsepower difference, you're not really going to feel it unless you're drag racing your car that might cause you, tenth of a second. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to notice it just driving your car around. Now, I will say that while the 87 versus 93 octane, I did not notice any power difference, to be honest. I did end up changing to 93 octane about a year into my ownership, and we'll discuss that later in the video as to why I did that. But next up on the list is actually the fuel economy. This to me is a toss up. It really nets out because with 87 octane, you're going to get slightly worse miles per gallon than you would with the 93 octane. The 93 octane just burns a little bit better, so your engine is running a little bit more efficiently. Is it going to be 2-3 miles per gallon? No. But you're probably going to notice a difference about, I don't know, 0.5 to 1 miles per gallon, depending on how you're driving. There's a lot of variables involved to really accurately measure it. But the thing is that even if the 87 octane is doing worse gas mileage versus the 93 octane, you are paying a lot more for the 93 octane. Like I said, it could be up to $1 per gallon difference between the 87 octane versus the 93 octane. So while you might be getting better gas mileage with the 93 octane, you're actually going to get you're actually going to pay a little bit more to get the 93 octane versus the 87 octane. So I think that to me just nets out really because while, it just does not have a real impact because you're just going to net out in terms of the gas mileage. So it's more or less the same as how I see it. Now, the last reason why you should consider the 87 versus 93 octane debate is really actually what makes or breaks this whole debate is the reliability concerns, especially with a 12.1 compression on our Gen 3 and Gen 4 Coyote motors, in this case the Gen 4 Coyote motor, that because you have such a high compression and if you're running 87 octane, it could result in a knock, which means your engine is probably not going to survive for the long period. And this is where you really kind of figure it out because as you saw, the power difference isn't much. You're really not going to be able to tell the power difference, especially if you're not taking it to the track or the drag strip. Fuel economy is the same story. You'd really net out in terms of the extra miles per gallon versus the extra cost with the 93 octane. But having the peace of mind of running 93 octane is gonna give you, you know, better reliability for your Gen 4 Coyote motor. And that to me is why I personally switched on my 2019 Mustang GT. I ran 87 octane, but in the back of my head, I was just like, even though the car runs fine, I intend to keep this car for a long period of time, and I don't want to have to deal with some reliability concerns on my engine just because I cheaped out on some fuel. Now, of course, this is not going to be a concern if you plan to keep your car for 3 to 4 years or something like that. You can easily just deal with it in terms of, trade it in. It's someone else's problem. But if you're like me and you like to keep your cars a long period of time, then running 93 octane will give you this assurance of having the engine running stronger if you intend to keep it, I don't know, 100,000 miles, 150,000 miles, something like that. So that to me is worth it. And I think that's really what makes or breaks this argument because depending on how you plan to keep the car, you may choose to run 93 because of that. As you see, there's no day-to-day benefits really of 87 versus 93, and I think you can run 87. I personally would still recommend 93 octane, but you can run 87 octane. That's not to say it's recommended, but you can run it. Even the Ford manual says that because if they had said 93, then obviously they would have tuned the engine for that. But if they're saying 87, they don't want all these lawsuits coming to them. So 87 is probably the minimum you can get away with. So while you can run it, I would still recommend 93 just because of reliability. I think it's a cheap insurance to pay against your engine, which goes a long way. So yeah, guys, that's all I've got. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Comment below which octane do you run on your Mustang GT. And of course, subscribe to Red 50 for more videos.